Hello, and welcome to another episode of In Progress. Today is a special episode, and we are welcoming back Zach Winderl because he actually started out the season for us talking about genre blending, but he is such a wonderful writer, and we wanted to have him back to talk about fighting and battle scenes because he does them epically. So, welcome back, Zach. So nice to
Hello.
have you.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you got to start off the season and we're ending off the season with you. I'm so excited. Why don't you remind us what you write and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, predominantly I write science fiction. My the two books I have out right now are both space westerns. So it tends to be where I write. I have short stories that kind of span, all sorts of genres. From general fiction to fantasy to zombie post-apocalyptic stuff. It's just kind of whatever catches my
Right.
fancy. I'll write it.
And I absolutely love your two books that you have out. It's the Adam and Go series, which, like you described, are space westerns. It's so fun, and you do such a good job with the fight scenes and the battles that I had to have you on as a guest. So tell us a little bit about how you got your start as a writer.
Well, as a writer, I've been writing most of my life, and I think that's kind of like the cop out cliche.
Hmm.
Um, when did you start? "Oh, I was born writing." Well, I can actually right here. I have this little book I wrote in second grade, and it is the Attack of the Legoland Pirates. And so in second grade,
Oh,
I wrote a 10 pages or 12-page book about Legos.
yeah.
So that's one of my earliest examples of writing, but I love it, and I've been doing it ever since. In college, I took some creative writing courses, started working on a massive space opera that is sitting in a drawer somewhere. Um,
Right.
it was just too big, but from there, um, about 6 years ago, I fell off a roof,
Right.
broke my back, was laid up, and said, "Hey, instead of watching TV, I'm going to write a book." So I wrote the first Adam and Go book, Genesis, and from there I kind of just kept rolling into book two, which is Trinity, and now I'm working on book three, which I haven't come up with a name for yet. So it's there, but it's in the works.
Yeah. No, tell us a little bit about the Adam and Go universe because it's so interesting. I always said like the one genre I don't really enjoy personally is a western,
Mhm.
but for some reason, put it in space, written by Zach Winderl, and I fall in love. Right. So tell us a little bit about the storyline.
Well, it's the storyline is
Right.
baseline. He is the Emperor's left hand. He's the Emperor's executioner, High Admiral, whatever. He's a high in the Emperor's court, and he gets betrayed and has to go on the run. And so he flees to basically the frontier of space. And it takes place in the God's Hand galaxy, which is actually a galaxy. You can actually go look at it, and it's pretty cool because it looks like this hand. Um,
Oh,
and
okay.
so that's where I came up with like the terms of the fingers and going down to the first knuckle or second knuckle, and it gives kind of a astro astral position. I don't know what you'd call it, but like an actual
Right.
position in space where you can talk about that. But most of it takes place away from the civilized centers of space, and it's all on the frontier. And that's kind of what makes it a space western, because
Right.
there's a lot of sci-fi that is, Star Trekky, that is very, everything works, everything is shiny, everything's new, everything looks pretty. And then you
Right.
get the space westerns, which actually covers a lot of sci-fi, but we just don't talk about it as much. But it takes place on the frontier, and I mean, Star Wars, the Millennium Falcon, the fact that Han Solo has to like actually hit his ship to make it work at one point.
Right.
That kind of falls into that genre. So that's the setting is this the frontiers, and so it's a little more lawless. Like a gunslinger, a bounty hunter.
Right.
They can
Right.
make a living out there. So that's where it takes place, and that's why it's kind of has the Western theme going.
Right. I really do enjoy it because there's a little bit of grit, but it's not. I guess I enjoy it a little bit more because it's not like the stereotypical, like set in the olden time, olden
Yeah,
times.
yeah,
It's not that, stereotype. Like you have very strong female characters, and you have very, modern day problems that he's dealing with, and I love that about your stories. Um, so as I also find it really inspirational that you had the setback in your life with the back getting injured, and you decided, instead of like sitting around and watching TV like I think most people would do, you were like, I'm gonna, oh yeah, the space western is Firefly for sure.
yeah, yeah.
um you
That's
really sat there and was like, I'm gonna, do something more with my time and finish a book, and you did it, and I really love that. I think that's such a great story with like gumption to it.
I guess I just my brain. I enjoy watching TV like everybody,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I can't watch too much. My brain starts wandering and I just lose interest and my imagination like will see something in a show and all of a sudden I'm staring off and like, oh, wouldn't this be fun, you know?
Right,
And
yeah,
so I think like the
yeah.
first couple days I watched some TV and then I was like, nah, I can't do
Have your
this.
own
So
stories to tell,
yeah.
right? Um, what so you do fight scenes really well. And I think like what a lot of people struggle with when it comes to fight scene is they either like over choreograph or they write it very clinically, kind of like a chess, like,
Hmm.
pawn moves to bishop, or like they
Yeah. Oh
they
yeah.
they kind of have a like rough and ready, either like too technical or too over choreographed, or like Hollywood style, like he gets blasted with a gun in the gut and just keeps walking like nothing
Yeah.
happened. And so there's this kind of like unrealism that happens with a lot of fight scenes. So just starting off advice, like what advice do you have for writing a well written fight scene? I know
Um,
I'm shooting broad here. I
yeah,
got the
yeah.
shotgun out.
I To be honest, I mean, it's almost like go get in a fight.
Yeah, okay.
I know that sounds kind of stupid to say. I mean, don't really go get in a fight,
Right.
but the thing is that a lot of writers they've never been in a fight. They've never seen a real fight, and so they don't understand that it's chaos. You know, a
Right.
lot of times
Mhm.
they, like you were saying, they think it's this choreographed thing. You know, we have this vision of, oh, you know, there's a fight and we're gonna go fight, and it's like that's not really
Honorable
how it
punch by
works.
punch. Yeah. Mhm.
And so my advice would be, you know, just break it down into its most, you know, kind of basic components and don't try to make it super flashy. Don't try to make it too long. I mean, that's one of the things that
Mhm.
I hear complaints about, especially like in movies and stuff, and some of the more recent
Right.
movies is, oh, there was a great fight scene, except for the fact that it lasted 15 minutes, and it's like fights don't last
Yeah.
that long. They don't. I don't
Right.
care if you're superheroes or whatever. That you know, a fight that lasts too long, or in a book. I mean,
Right.
if you have just a fight between like a gunfight or whatever between 4 or 5 characters, it's not going to last 15 pages. So
Right.
just be aware of your length, I think would be one of the things, and then break it down to, you know, almost like gut level emotional stuff. So because a lot of times when fights happen, emotions run high. You know, you're
Right.
panicking, you're running around, you're trying to figure out what's going on. So you know, unless you're writing, I suppose, like a big battle scene where you have multiple things happening. Like I'm thinking, you know, maybe like a Lord of the Rings or what's his name? Is it David Weber? Who
Yeah.
writes almost like naval, like sci-fi naval stuff. And so he'll write
Right.
scenes with, you know, and he's talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of ships doing different things, and he'll bounce from, you know, ship to ship and talk about what's going on, and then you can have it last longer. So my advice would be know what you're writing. If you're writing something small, keep it short and quick. If you're writing something
Mhm.
grand, then you can go bigger.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I was going to ask you to kind of talk about the differences between fights and battles, because I
Mhm.
think you are got it spot on. Like fight scenes, you want to be kind of quick and dirty, kind of matching, like keeping the pacing going, keeping the things, keep it rather simple. I feel
Mhm.
like is a good way to approach fights. But battles are really hard because you have to think more strategically about it, but also not get into that clinical chess
Mhm.
writing of like how moving piece by piece. And so, how do you approach battles differently than you do fights? Because you had some battle scenes in your book too.
Nothing
Not full
quite
blown
that
battle.
huge, but
Hmm.
yeah, and that also you can break it down into, um, what's your focus?
Okay.
Like my battle scene, in the first book it was focused on Adam and his crew
Yeah.
and what they were doing, and some other stuff was happening during this battle, but it was primarily focused on what's he doing. And so I would say, advice or whatever for people writing battles is, or the differences, are you looking at what I think people, military folk, would call like squad level?
Oh,
Are
okay.
you looking at a small group, or are you looking at the whole battle? Are you looking at, um,
Like the
Tolkien's The Battle of
platoon.
Five
Mhm.
Armies? Are you writing an entire chapter that covers an entire battle, or are you going to take it and break it down and look at, okay, so this big battle is happening, but I mean, you could look at, if you want a movie comparison, look at like Saving Private Ryan. The opening scene takes place on during D-Day. That was big. A lot of
Right,
people were
right,
involved. In the opening couple minutes showed the scope of the battle, but then
right.
quickly brought it into, okay, here's this squad and here's what they do, and to get to. And so I think when you break it down to like a smaller group, it's
Mhm.
easier to move from one challenge to another and keep a battle scene rolling without getting stale. Um,
Right.
Whereas with the bigger one, I think you have to do, like I mentioned with Weaver, where you have to jump from, kind of point of view to point of view.
Right.
And I'll touch on that a little later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that you need to keep it fresh by having different points of view with a bigger battle scene, so that you can keep the whole scope of the battle, and
Right.
the reader will understand just how big it is while keeping it personal. Because I feel like anytime in fiction, whatever the genre, if you step back and you start writing it just totally from like a clinical military history kind of point of view,
Mhm.
you're losing the point of writing fiction. And I mean,
Right.
I'm running into that right now with, to be completely honest, I'm reading the latest, George R. R. Martin book, or I
Right. Mhm.
started to, and it's not really a novel. It's not like Game of Thrones. It's a history, and it's like, if I wanted to read a history book, I've got an entire shelf of history books on subjects that I am actually interested in. It's like, if I want to read
Right.
fiction in a
Right.
story, I want to fall in love with characters. I don't want just a broad stroke, battle scene that I don't really care about anybody. And so that's why I think the key to writing a big battle scene is the, point of view, and build to it so that when you hit that big battle at the end of the book, you have several points of view, characters that you care about, and you're interested while, getting the picture of what's going on.
Right. I think a lot of the foibles that authors make when writing fight scenes is forgetting that they have to be keeping the audience, the reader in mind, right? Like they have to keep in mind that readers need to be invested in the characters, because like, even when you start a book and you want the big, hook to get readers into a book and you want it to be big and exciting, people always kill off like somebody's like mom or like a big character to someone's life,
Or
but we
somebody's
don't know.
wife.
Right. Well, well, but you do it really well though, because you make us immediately care about what's happening, right? With Adam and stuff, and
Mhm.
there's a child involved, so we are immediately like a little bit invested in what's going on, because it's just like, what's going on? He's got a kid. He's jumping out a window. Like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
right? But the big mistake a lot of people make is they just have like something dramatic happening to a character without the reader invested in that character yet. So we're just saying like, oh, there's a big airplane crash. They lost their family, but like, who is this person? Like,
Yeah.
why, how close were they with their family? Like, how much of an impact is this going to have on their life? Like, we're kind of missing that audience, like relatability or engagement with a character. And the fact that, like fiction is meant, like you said, it's not meant to be all historical or informational. There is, there is a sense that we are reading for a little bit of escape or entertainment, or to gain some value from what we're reading in, one way or another. And so I feel like for a lot of people, when it comes to fight scenes, they kind of don't keep the audience in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to writing fight scenes, like, do you think, like, what do you think is most important, like mood or pacing or matching the style, the writing style, the voice of the rest of the book? Like, what do you kind of focus on? Um,
Well, to be completely honest,
mhm.
I don't. I feel like I pace my fight scenes differently than the rest of the book.
Okay,
I want the
interesting.
book to flow. Um, but fight scenes, like I was talking about, being in a fight and being it's chaos, and so I
Right,
really try to. I mean, I try to keep my paragraphs shorter to begin with.
hmm,
I feel like, gone are the days of the Dickensian, whole
right,
paragraph, like that's a page. It's like readers don't want that. They want shorter, they want more compact. And so I tend to try to keep my paragraphs 3 to 5, lines long ish. Um, but then when I hit a fight scene,
right,
I try to go even shorter. I love having just
mm,
one line paragraphs or one word paragraphs,
right,
because I really try to capture that, like I said, a fight it's chaos. You don't know what's
right,
happening. And so you might start thinking this and get cut off and have to go and do that. And, I really kind of want to capture some of the frantic nature of it. At the
right,
same time, I love doing that old Western like standoff thing. I love when you have a fight scene and you know it's going to happen, but you can like ease into it and you
mm,
can build. And so you start building this tension towards it. And the writing style, it's almost like it compresses the closer you get to the actual fight breaking out. And it's like, it's so I feel like I can have, a page or two leading up to a fight that can last, half a page or
right,
less,
right.
or like 3 paragraphs, but it's built up. And because that's what a fight is, and
Yeah,
a lot of times it's you're getting amped up, you're worried, you're nervous, anxiety is going through the roof. You're like, oh, is this going to happen? This is going to happen. And then it does happen, and it's like
mhm.
10 seconds and it's over, and everybody's like, oh, that okay, that was fast.
Right,
um
but that, I mean, it's very effective how you do it, and that's why I specifically wanted to talk to you about this,
mhm,
because yeah, you're right. Like, there's a lot of anticipation, there's a lot of buildup, there's a lot of suspense and tension around like getting into a skirmish or a fight or altercation. But then when it happens, it's just kind of like time simultaneously is both the fastest it's gone in your life and the
mhm,
slowest it's gone in your
yep,
life. And there's also, like you said, the chaos. You're pivoting. You're getting stuff comes at you from the sides, and you didn't anticipate and stuff like that. And so I feel like that there's only been one fight scene, I think, in my life that I've experienced as a media, like as an audience watching, that was not fast paced and it worked. And that's the Princess Bride fight scene where
okay,
they're, it's
well,
because it's a battle of wit as
yeah,
much as it is a battle
mhm,
of this, sword play between the masked guy and Inigo Montoya.
yeah,
So it's just like, but I feel like a lot of people don't pay attention to pacing as much as they should, because when the pacing is, like you said, more fast paced, you use punchier words,
mhm,
punchier action, and focus on that and kind of break it down to like your reptile brain that you're stuck in when you're fighting. um, I feel like that's really effective, and I feel like that's kind of what's missing with some of the people who try to write longer fight
mhm.
scenes, or like you said, like just the longer prose describing the fight scenes, where that's where it comes in feeling like really choreographed or something like that.
Well,
um,
and
Go
real
ahead.
quick, just to interrupt, to to touch on what you're saying there
Yeah.
too. knowing knowing the style of what you're writing, because what you're talking about in The Princess Bride, it's a duel.
Yeah.
And so, you have two masters who are going back and forth, and they're almost playing,
Right,
versus
right,
a tombstone style gunfight where
right,
it's over almost before you can, it even started. Or,
right.
you know, um, even like just a fist fight, most of the time those are fast and chaotic. A duel is slower, or you go with like samurai duel, and I mean you'll have, especially in film, you'll have, a long buildup of them just standing there, kind of like studying each other,
Right,
what's
right.
going to happen, and so knowing exactly what style of fight you're writing can really
Mhm.
lend itself to how you write it, the length, how it's drawn out,
Right, right.
and like we were talking about a battle versus a small skirmish fight. The same can be said about, a duel. If you're talking, a Western duel, or, you're talking medieval knight duel, where they're just pounding
Yeah,
each other
yeah.
bloody because they've got so much armor on, or, you can go a bunch of different ways, but you're absolutely right there. Knowing the style helps you make it work.
Right. And that's, yeah, I feel like, we all have like different ideas of what makes for an epic fight scene because we have like watched so many movies like from Hollywood blockbusters where it's like, okay, this is what a fight scene is. But like, do you have any tips for researching, for example, like watching FEMA or not was it maybe it's not FEMA, but the historical, like if you said like if you're fighting knights,
Hmm.
there's the European
Yeah.
style martial arts,
Hmm.
where they have videos that you can watch on YouTube of like fighting styles or like how it would have historically happened. And so, like, do you have any like research tips for like like that?
Well, YouTube.
Yeah, right. YouTubes
Because
are fun.
exactly like you're saying, if you're writing,
HEMA, that's what it is. Historical European martial arts, I think
that's
is.
I know what
I
you're
said
talking about.
FEMA,
I
but
don't know exactly what
yeah.
it's called, but yeah, you want to. I've watched some of those, some of the just like the big melee tournaments where they have like ten
Yeah.
guys go against 10 guys, and they're just like I said, I could see a duel in that sense lasting a long time, because with
Right.
all that armor, literally they could just pound the crap out of each other for
Until they're too
5 to 10
exhausted.
minutes till, yeah. So, but I have watched, researched, like quick draw,
Okay.
like champions for like they go around. I don't know if they work with rodeos or where they go, but they actually have champions for, drawing and hitting targets as fast as possible.
Oh wow, yeah.
And I've watched like instructional videos on how they actually, not only stand, but how they place their feet, how they lean, how they
Mm.
turn, stuff like that, and how they will maneuver their body for a quicker draw and a more accurate draw. And so I put little like snippets of that into my writing, because I mean that's what
Right.
Adam is. I mean, he's a gunslinger. I mean,
Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, that's what she does. She's also a gunslinger, and so,
Right, right.
and she is faster than Adam. Um, so it works. But so yeah, so YouTube. I mean, just a lot of research on online, going to different, sites about,
Right.
whatever it is that I'm actually looking for. But sometimes I'll just, and for like inspiration stuff, like I'll go watch movies. Like I love watching old spaghetti westerns.
Mhm.
When I'm kind of thinking about, okay, well, what's Adam going to do in this situation? Oh, he's got a standoff. So what do they
Right,
do? Oh, look,
right,
they focus on the eyes, and the eyes are watching what the eyes are watching the hands, and and just
right.
trying to pick. And I know it's Hollywood, but then again, it's not like I can just bounce next door and ask my neighbor, what he does in a gunfight. So,
Right.
um,
Well, no, I don't mean to like crap all over Hollywood. What I mean when I say like the unreal realism, that we kind of have absorbed and believed in so long. I mean like the big action blockbusters where,
mhm.
like I said, they get a fatal injury or
Oh yeah.
something that would like completely take out like a lot of their ability to use their dominant arm or something, and they're just still like through sheer will, I'm still going to punch you in the face. And they just don't seem affected by their injuries. I really enjoy a movie where we see the toll that the
Hmm.
fighting takes on you, because I think what people don't understand about like fights, if they've never really been, and not that I'm an expert or anything, but when you get in a fight and the adrenaline starts to wear off and you're getting tired, and but you still have a fight in front of you.
Hmm.
These real things that people face in life or death situations, or in battles, or in war, or whatever is going on, where just how hard it is to keep fighting, or like how hard the fight actually like physically is or
Okay.
emotionally is. And we just have this idea that like, well, the hero is going to make it through without a struggle because they're so strong, or they're so brave, or something like that. That's really what I kind of like am poo-pooing on is
Well, no, I think I mentioned that earlier. Like some of these like superhero movies where you'll have a
right,
15-minute battle, and it's like, dude, how
yeah,
many times can you get punched in the face? I mean, I don't care if you're a superhero, but
right,
if you can
right,
get punched in the face that many times, what's the point? So,
right,
and
right.
in that on that sense, one of my favorite gunfight movies, or moments in a movie was
Mhm.
Open Range. I don't know if you ever saw
Oh,
that, the old Kevin Costner, uh, Robert Duvall, I think. Um, and I just love it because it's like the big showdown at the end, and they kind of face off real close together. Like it's almost like what do you call it? I don't know. But they're basically like we're gonna fight. And so
right,
they get there and they're talking, and I think Kevin Costner like points to one of the guys. He's like, I know you. You're that really famous gunfighter. You killed a whole bunch of guys, right? And the guy's like, yeah. And he's like, "Pfft," and he just shoots him like right there, and then they all run.
right.
And it's like, huh, that's probably the most realistic thing ever. It's
Yeah,
like,
that's genius. Take
yeah,
out
like
the really good shooter. Yeah.
instead of all these movies where they're like, well, we're just gonna, just start shooting at each other and shoot like a whole bunch of times, and
Yeah.
or you get like
Chaos.
Rambo,
Mhm.
where it's like, I'm just gonna kill everybody, and it's like,
Right, right, right.
but and then it was funny because then after that, they all kind of ran away and retreated and like took cover,
Right,
and they didn't really, it took a long time after that because everybody was undercover and they're just like shooting and trying to hit each other. But it's like that was kind of pivotal. They took out
right.
the most dangerous enemy and made it a fair fight. And so,
Right. Yeah, that is really smart. I think that's one of the things I enjoy about your fight scenes is the cleverness behind the planning that goes into the fight, right? Like Adam never just walks into a fight with no strategy. He has all these strategies. I mean, he survived for a reason, and he was the emperor's left hand for a reason. You know
yeah.
what I mean? But I really love the details that go into like the plan or the heist or the fight. It's never just like show up and start shooting. There's always thought behind what he does, and I think it always surprises me what happens. Like I love that you're not predictable, even though it's a fight scene, and you're like, the good guy's got to win, right? Like as a reader, we all hope the protagonist is gonna end up victorious at the end of the day, and we all believe in the character because we know how good Adam is at what he does. But I'm always still surprised when I read your fight scenes still. Um, and so I really love that. What is your favorite fight scene? Okay, so you described this from this movie that you love, that he just takes out,
Hmm.
the most dangerous guy. Do you have like another like favorite fight scene where you just like love what they did with it, or?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of different things that I love, and I love like the good, the bad, and the ugly. I love the
Mm,
Mexican standoff
okay.
at the end, and it's
Hmm.
kind of Adam-esque. The whole,
Right.
you know, he unloads his gun beforehand, so he doesn't, there are three of them, but only Blondie knows that he only has one real threat, and so it's the whole
Right.
like thinking ahead, but I love that scene where you see everybody and he's the only one that knows everything. I like
Right.
that.
Right.
To be completely honest, like I like I like some of the Jack Reacher stuff,
Okay.
because it's quick and it's brutal, um and it's just, kind of like a fight would actually be,
Right. Right.
especially if you're if you have that kind of skill set.
Right.
Um and My
Yeah.
favorite film. Yeah, I mean, it totally depends on my mood. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes I do. Sometimes I love The Princess Bride. I mean, I think it's a
Yeah.
great movie.
Mhm.
I love the fight scene, and it's all or the duel that we were talking about. And
Right. Right.
I almost love the duel for the dialogue. You
Right.
know?
The banter that they have
Yeah,
is more the point of the fight scene almost, than the actual fighting. But you can still see the skill involved
yeah.
with the parrying and all the moves that
Hmm.
they're and
And then you
the
get the whole
spinning. Yeah.
Adam-esque, hey, I'm not left-handed,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it's just I love little stuff like that where it's like, oh, you think it's the fight's going one way, it's one thing. It's like, oh, no, 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 I'm actually right-handed. Well, me
Right.
too,
Right.
So,
Right. They both start out with their
yeah.
less dominant hand. And we're able to pull up like, I'm actually better than you think. Like, luckily I also am better than you think. It is so clever the way that was done. And uh one fight scene I really like, and for I can't remember the name of the movie right now, but it's Charlize Theron, and she's like a spy in Berlin in right before the collapse of the wall. And I really enjoy her fight scenes in that movie because you see them getting exhausted because
Mhm.
they're kicking the crap out of each other. Like it is literally like she's in a life and death battle, and you see like the exhaustion between them. And there's one scene that is kind of a longer fight scene, but it still feels very real because like I said, these people are fighting for their life against each other, and so you're not just going to quit and walk away because
Mhm.
that other person's not going to walk away.
Yeah.
But you see the toll each hit takes on each character. And so I really enjoy it. And maybe Joe behind the scenes knows what movie I'm talking about. Maybe not, but um, yeah, that really impacted me because, like I said, it was so gritty and realistic.
Mhm.
They're hurting each other badly, and you see how they progressively get like more tired, and it is sheer will keeping them
Oh, yeah.
fighting
Yeah.
at the end. Are there any fight scenes that you absolutely hate or like think got it super wrong? I don't know. Yeah, Atomic
I was
Blonde.
wondering if that's what it was, but I
Yeah, because
haven't seen it. I
she
just
submerges herself in the ice bath, you know what I mean, to recover from her injuries and
Yeah.
stuff, and yeah.
Well, and I mean, I would say anybody in that situation. I mean, okay, so I've never been in like a bunch like real fights and stuff,
Right,
but
right.
my buddies and I, we used to when we were kids, we were idiots, and we used to like tape oven mitts on and just pound the crap out of each other. And
Right,
so anybody who like I totally get what you're saying. About just the fatigue and fighting. So,
right, right,
I watch like I every once in a while I'll watch like a little MMA stuff, not a ton,
right,
but I'm still impressed that these guys can go as long as they do, throwing
right.
punches, taking punches, grappling. Because firsthand, I can tell you, you go a couple minutes if you're not used to it of just pounding on each other and just wrestling and throwing each other around, and you hit
Right.
a point where you're like, and you're
Completely out of
throwing these
gas.
punches that are basically just like
Little love
wet
taps, yeah.
noodle yeah, and it's like you like I literally have nothing left. Like I used to fight my best friend who we called him Tiny because he's now 6'5", like he's like
Right,
an NFL lineman. He's 6'5", 330 pounds or something.
right.
The dude's huge. I used to fight him just for fun. And he like it got to the point where like I would last like 2 or 3 minutes and then he'd just kind of like flop on me. And I'm like, there's nothing I can do. I can't. I'm just
Yeah,
so
no strength
tired.
to push them off. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying about the fatigue in a
Yeah,
fight and how
yeah.
Hollywood really doesn't do that justice most of the time.
Yeah,
I
because
was
these
trying to
these
think there was one.
MMA fighters, they train for months with
Oh
just
yeah.
cardio just to be able to last the full 5-minute rounds and do it a couple times. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it is so hard to like get to the point where you're just like, out of gas, but you keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to think. There was a movie that I was thinking of, but I can't remember what it was where it was some sort of fight like that. And the guys got to like towards the end of it and they're both so tired, they're like on opposite sides of like a pillar or something. And
Right.
they're like, we're gonna do this. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. Give me one more second, and they're
Yeah,
talking,
yeah.
and you can tell, and it's kind of done in a comical way, but it's like that's way more realistic. So,
Right, right. Yeah. I know what you're talking about, the fight scenes that last too long. I watched
mhm,
a vampire hunter movie recently. I won't say the name because I don't want to crap on anyone too bad. But he had a fight scene with a vampire and it went on for like 10-15 minutes. Like there was like 3 points where you think it's done and then all
mhm.
of a sudden she does this contortionist action to show like I'm not a person, I'm a vampire. And it was just kind of like, who fights that long? Like just kill her, or don't kill her and get killed by
Kill her
her.
or
But
die.
like, yeah, it was just like so drawn out, and it's just like nobody outside is hearing, you fly through a wall, and you just get up like it's Tuesday, like, you're not affected by it. And it was just like so drawn out that it kind of like it would have been an epic fight, except for it went on too long and you're just like, okay, I'm done, I'm over this, like, why
Yeah,
is it still going? And it's just like you said, it's not believable that people can just go for 15 minutes of hard fighting and not be affected by it at all, and just like dust off their coat at the end and just walk out like nothing happened.
yeah. Well, I mean, to go back to your question of what I like fight scenes that I hate.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have a single one. I mean, there are definitely things exactly like you're saying that bother me in a
right,
fight
right,
scene, and the more unrealistic it is, the more I kind of detach from it.
right,
Um,
right.
I mean, scenes where it's a gunfight and they never seem to run out of ammo, or
Yeah,
or they
right.
never reload. That bothers me, and it actually kind of bothers my wife Jordan when we'll be watching something. I'll be like, he should have reloaded. Nope, there's no way. And she's like, just
Right, right.
shut up and just watch it. And I'm like, it's stuff like that bothers me. Stuff like you're saying that goes on way too long.
Mm,
Um, I don't know. Like sometimes when people have opportunities to like end a fight and they don't,
right.
it bothers me.
Mhm,
Is it wrong? I don't know. I mean, it's their style. It's what they want to do. I mean, it's
right.
the same deal with like kung fu movies. Kung fu movies go on way too long, but for some reason, I love those. Um, you know,
Well, because
but
yeah, there's a mastery in each movement and each non-movement,
yeah,
right? Because there's that battle of wills and wit going on, behind the scenes where they're staring each other down and anticipating their next moves, right? So it's kind of there. I do appreciate some movies of like the kung fu movies, like you were saying, where it's like there's standing there and just kind of observing each other's stances and hands and feet and kind of playing out the moves before they happen.
mhm,
So it looks like they're not doing much, but there's still something going on interesting for the audience to watch.
yeah. Um, I actually wrote notes down for things that fight scenes that are wrong.
Okay, yeah,
I
yeah.
forgot about that. Because I actually wrote down books and stuff. Um,
Right, right.
and
10
so
people
because
on
you
one.
were you had said that, and so one of the ones that I'm recently reading, and yes, I hate it when 10 guys fight the hero at one time, and you know, it seems like it just doesn't make sense.
Right, right.
Unless you can play it off in a way that, you know, it is realistic. 'Cause I mean, yeah, there are
Right.
times where, you're gonna be outnumbered, and so you have to play uh strategy in that
Yeah,
situation. And I think an author needs to bring in the strategy, so it's not just oh, 10 guys showed up and bang, 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 they're all dead. It's like,
right,
no, it's
right.
okay. So these guys showed up. What did he do? How did he surprise some? How did he do this? And, or, it's like, even I mentioned, I'm liking the Jack Reacher fights. And, it's like when it's
Right,
like 6-on-1, and it's like, it seems like it's going to be unrealistic, but then you read it or watch it and you realize that it's written in a way where it shows you, okay, he works hard to position himself to isolate these
one at a
two,
time. Mhm.
so that yes, there are six of them, but he gets one guy in a headlock or something and holds him in a way where the other guys can't get to him. So it's like
Right,
you can
right.
you can do the 6v1 or the 10v1, um, but you have to make it work. It can't just be
Or
like
have training to show how they
yeah,
got to the point where they can handle that many people.
yeah.
Yeah, because like or like yeah, there's I really enjoy when you see how they got to be a good fighter.
Sorry,
The
that's
other two
yeah.
always yeah. Yeah.
That's it exactly, and because that's what he does, and as a writer, that's what Lee Childs points out is in like the first fight of the book, and I don't know if it's in every book, 'cause I've only read a few of them, but
Right.
he points out, okay, I'm outnumbered 6 versus 1. I know that this guy is the alpha. I need to take him out first. These two guys, are will follow him, but they're going to be slower to get in. And then,
Right.
as you said, the last two will always run. So I like that because as an author, if you explain that,
Right.
then the fight makes sense versus the I don't know what he's doing. Oh, look, he's just punching them all in the face, and they all go down. And it was
Right.
okay.
Right.
So, um, but one of the things so I wrote down a couple books that I've read recently. I read Tides of War. Or I'm reading Tides of War, by Pressfield. Um, I am not a huge fan of his battle scenes,
Okay.
because they're so. And as we were talking about earlier, I mean, he has some big battle scenes, but they're so kind of generalized.
Mm,
And I guess you could look at it and say, well, he's capturing these, chaotic snapshots of a battle. But the problem is that he does it in a way where you have no real feel for the battle,
right.
and so it feels just kind of like this jumble explained from,
A
a
distance.
distance, and you're like, and so I feel like it lacks the intimate involvement that a fight or battle should have,
Right.
on some
Right.
level. The other one that as I'm rereading the Wheel of Time series,
Okay.
um, and I kind of love hate Robert Jordan's battle scenes because some of them I feel like are really fun and really well done, and then some of them you get into like Rand, and he's been taught the forms,
Hmm.
and so so some of his battles are really like literally like the cat rears and parting
Hmm.
the reeds, and he goes through like these like 15 names, and you're like, well, what is that? I don't
Right.
I don't
Right.
really know what just happened. You just spit a bunch of names at me,
Yeah, it's
you
just
know.
jargon. Hmm.
Yeah, and so jargon, yes. So I mean, so stuff like that, not crazy of it. So if I'm looking in a book for a couple examples of what I don't like in a fight scene slash battle scene, that
Right.
would be it. Just lack of intimacy, and then jargon that gives you like little understanding of what you're actually reading.
Right, because we want to be able to we want to be able to kind of picture what's happening, or at least understand on a level what's happening. I really agree with that. Do you think how important do you think it is to show the effects of fights and battles on the character after the fight?
On your characters, or like the
Yeah,
opposing characters?
on your character.
On your characters. I think it's important.
Hmm.
At the same time, sometimes I think you have to be able to explain something healing quickly,
Right,
or
right,
or being remedied quickly so that the story can carry on,
right,
because most stories you don't have time to be like, oh, and then they stopped and waited for 6 weeks for this bone to heal, and then they went on,
right,
and so
right.
if you can, and I write sci-fi, so I can be like, yeah, they used a
Favor a new
stasis
leg.
cast, and
Yeah,
they were able to carry on, or like in, actually I don't want to talk too much about that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
like she getting hurt, I mean, so yeah, she got hurt, and had to, was unable to help with the rest of the journey, and so I think it is important to be realistic, because with the effects, because yeah, it's fights, nobody comes out completely unscathed. It
Right,
doesn't
right,
happen. Everybody, even in the best fight that you win, you're getting dinged up somewhat.
right,
I
right.
I challenge you to find any professional fighter anywhere who walks out of a match.
Not looking like ground meat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the same goes, I mean, look at go look at history footage from World War II or
Right.
Vietnam or the Korean War, and look at soldiers coming out of fight. Nobody comes out of a real fight without some sort of injury, whether it's mental fatigue, physical fatigue, heart, like bodily harm. It doesn't happen. Now, the cool thing, like I was saying, is that in sci-fi, a lot of that can be remedied. So it's a lot easier to keep your characters alive. Like I sometimes I struggle with, you know, historical stuff, and people will survive forever and ever and ever without a scratch. And you're like,
that ear infection though. Yeah, that would get them. Yeah, I think like one of the books that made a big impact on me as a reader and a writer was the Divergent series. Not because it's immortal characters, healing powers, yeah. And not because it's like, the super amazing series, but it showed the character. One, it showed her going through training to get to be as efficient with weapons and everything as she did. But two, it showed, Triss having PTSD basically afterwards. But it was the first time I had read a book that wasn't just like, I killed somebody and moved on with my life. And I was just like, yes, there are repercussions for doing things you have to do in the moment, but you still are going to suffer from like emotional turmoil from what you had to do in the moment. So even if you think that what you did was 100% right and moral in a fight scene, there's still going to be some kind of upheaval. Like you said, no one gets out unscathed. And so I think that people really enjoyed that, and that's why Divergent was like so big when it came out, because I feel like for me as a reader, like I said, it was one of the first books I read where it was just like, oh, there it's showing the cause and effect of what happens after the fight. And I think that, authors now do a really great job of doing that, more so than in the past where it was like, well, the hero's doing the right thing, so they're fine, like morally with what's happened. And it's just like human lives and emotions are a lot messier than that. So I really enjoy seeing like the after effects of, like, when she gets hurt from your book and Adam, it just feels like crap, right? Because he's like, I should have done something more to protect her. And, he feels, protective of his crew and all of that stuff. I love those moments though, because it's just like, yeah, it's not just his life at stake at this point. He's got a whole crew that he's responsible for. And I love those little glimpses into the messy human emotions, right?
Yeah. Well, it's both physical and mental,
Right.
and I probably don't do that a ton with Adam. And my rationalization there is, I mean, that's been his life.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been doing this for, however old he is. I don't know, 30 years, 20 years,
Right.
it's like a professional soldier, for it. And I don't know if we talked about this last time or if we talked about it in some random conversation, but I firmly believe that there are people with, I mean, I don't even know what to call it, but like almost like the mentality or the ability to mentally be a soldier and to fight and to basically compartmentalize and be like, okay, nope, that's what I did there. This is what I did there. And that's why you have some people historically that have been able to do that, and they've spent their whole lives doing it and they're okay.
They sleep like a baby.
And then you have other people who just can't,
Right.
and I do, I mean, I have no, factual basis for that thought.
No, I understand that, the compartmentalizing, because I do think that, Adam is very much able to take what he does and understand why he does it, and say that his motivation is him and his child and F anyone else, right? I understand that 100%. And it's like I said, it's always interesting to watch what he does, because like I said, it's surprising because he's so thoughtful and he plans for everything. And part of that is his experience as a professional soldier his whole life. Is he has, contingency upon contingency, and I love that about it, because, the unexpected happens and he still manages to like scrape through somehow.
When in doubt, he's got the pram. So
Right. Yeah, the pram, which always, oh my god, when the pram shows up, I'm just like, oh, these guys have no idea what's about to happen to them. You know what I mean? So I love that. Um, I do want to talk to you a little bit, just in general, about your writing process, right?
Okay.
So, what does your writing process look like?
Well, I am. I was actually talking to another author about,
Mm,
you know, whether it be a pantser, a plotter, or all
right.
that, and it's like realistically, I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
always uh I always have this idea and I write down a real loose outline so I
Mm,
have an idea of where the story's going. But I'm not married to it. And so as
right.
I write, it will like I'll have a straight outline and the path will go all
Yeah.
over, but eventually it will come back to where I want to go. So yeah, so I don't know what you call somebody in the middle, but that's me. I have
Planter.
a what?
Planter.
A
I
planter?
think. Yeah.
Guess that's me.
Yeah.
I have an
Yeah.
idea, but I'm not. It's very loose. And then my writing, like I think the biggest thing for me is consistency. And
Right.
so my dad always said, a page a day. That was
Mm-hmm.
the minimum. You write a page a day, and at the end of the year, you have 365 pages.
Right.
And
Right.
so I'll have days where I'll only write one page, and I'll
Hmm.
have days where I'll write 10 pages.
Right.
Um, and but it's so I sit down in the morning and I write and I usually go with like three drafts
Yeah.
ish.
Hmm.
The first draft is just bare bones and I layer on detail in the second draft and the third draft a little bit more, but looking more for the final, does everything flow?
Right.
And
Right.
then I turn it over to some amazing editor, who can go through and make sure that I didn't leave anything super important out. So
Right. I love getting my hands on stories, so I'm just like, give it to me. Yeah. Uh, what about what would you say is your biggest influence in writing?
probably my dad. I mean,
Yeah.
he writes poetry, but he has just for as long as I can remember, he's written. And
Yeah.
so and it's a passion. It's uh, you know, to the point where it almost an obsession, you might say, but
Right.
it's a creative outlet and I totally understand the if you're not able to get that out,
Right.
it just
Right.
builds up in your head. And he's modeled that for me. So like my entire life I've seen him getting up early,
Hmm.
sitting down, he does his devotions every day and then he writes. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I kind of follow suit and that probably my biggest influence writing wise is right there. So
Yeah. That's wonderful. And then one more question, and then we'll let us know where we can find you because Joe does want to say a few words at the end of the
nope,
show. Where do you feel like you find your inspiration the most for writing?
life.
Yeah.
It's all over. I mean, I don't know that I find inspiration in any one place. Um, I've written a short story because I was having lunch in a restaurant and saw a guy walk by and I was like, there's just something about him that,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of tweaks this. And then there are things in life that I find amusing. And
Right.
so I'll write a short story. I mean, I wrote a short story called Royalty because I was amused at how little I think we actually know about,
Mm.
old like Egypt and
Right.
Egyptian history. And yet how much we are told we know everything. And it's like, I don't know that we know everything. I think
Right.
I
Right.
think when you look back and you at some of these older civilizations that there's just a lot more that was lost than,
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
kept. And so stuff like that, I wrote a short story there. Adam and Go was I was watching like Lone Wolf and Cub, and I was like, this would be just a fun based storyline in space, to take
Mm.
that kind of dad and child, father child dynamic. And I was just like, you don't see that.
Right.
Realistically, the closest thing to that these days is like the Mandalorian, and they're
Right.
not related. So there's not the family tie there, and so I was just
Mhm.
like, we see all these, badass heroes,
Right.
males, females, whatever, but they're always like the loner, they don't have a family.
Yeah.
So my question is, well, what happens when somebody with a family is in that position? And
Right.
so that's, I guess a lot of inspiration comes from questions and,
Yeah.
but just life, looking around, watching movies, watching people, reading books, just
Yeah.
daydreaming.
Love it. Love that answer. All right. So where can we find you online? And
Well, right now I have my website, which is zachwinderl.com. It's called The Literary Busker. And I write there about my, just about writing thoughts, short stories, stuff like that. If you want to buy my book, there is a link through there, or you can find me at Amazon, and it's available ebook, hard copy. And yeah, that's where I am.
yeah, and check it out. Adam and Go is a wonderful series, and I can't wait to get my hands on the third one. That
Soon,
I mean, that's the best thing about being an editor is that I get to see the story before anyone else does, and I'm like, yeah, I feel so special. That's
nice.
my evil cackling because I get the story before anyone else does. So, um, but yes, if you know, you can find me at hijinkswriter.com, hijinkswriter on most social media except for TikTok, where it is Ginny and Tonic, Jinny and Tonic. And I will allow Joe to come on and say a few parting words.
Well, I just wanted to say, for people who don't know, this is Julia's last show with us. It's
For
been an
now.
absolute pleasure. When we started this journey so long ago now, Julia was always a champion of us. She was always a part of what we were doing, and she will be a part of what we do in the future, no doubt. She'll still be around. She'll still hang out with us and do all the things that we've enjoyed having her do. And so, I mean, she was one of the first to ask to be, to do her own thing and do her own show. So we were very, very proud of this show, and so we're just so excited for your future and what you've got going on. You've meant so much to me personally and to this network, and I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you've done for us. And I wish you nothing but the best, my friend.
Oh, I'm trying not to cry right now. Yeah, I have really enjoyed doing this show, and I love the Go Indie Now Network. Always will be a part of the Go Indie Now Network if Joe will have me. I just yeah. Oh, thank you, Anita. Yeah, I felt like this season was so wonderful and everything that I hoped that it would be, and I want the next season of whatever I produce to be just as epic and just as good. And so I feel like this is a good time to take a pause on In Progress and kind of get get ready to kick butt in the next thing. And so thank you, Joe, for everything that you do always. And thank you, Zach, for being the first and the last of this season.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I've really, really, this has been like such a wonderful opportunity for me, and to be on this show and do what I do. But as always, it's always time to go indie now, and we'll see you on the next adventure.
Bye, everybody.